are digging in on tying class abilities to the Covenants in Shadowlands, this is probably as good a time as any to delve into these abilities and what they can do for your brewmastering in the Land of the Dead. I'll also be covering the Soulbind Conduits that are currently in the beta, as well as our legendary powers. And if I've been competent, I'll have put timestamps in the description if you want to skip. So, let's start this Covenant class ability review with the clean shirts of Shadowlands, the Kyrians. Now, the Kyrians may have a very pretty place, but there is one thing that is undeniably underwhelming about their Covenant, and that is the ability that everyone gets. Summon Steward. To me, this is essentially Healing Elixir with a mass dispel of everything. Will it work on everything though? I'm sure that the people at Blizzard are looking for exceptions to the rule just in case of mass cheesing of mechanics. And this won't be the only Covenant ability that's going to run into that problem. For Brewmasters in particular, I'd suspect only the bleed component would be valuable. We can dispel disease and poisons ourselves with Detox, and overland encounters are unlikely to have debuffs that would outright kill us. And in dungeons and other group content, someone is at least supposed to be healing and or dispelling us through that. There are some data mined additional abilities, the aforementioned amenities on this tooltip, but there's not much detail at the moment as to how they can be used and where and how effective they are, so I'll wait a bit until they flesh this out more. Oh well, never mind. Let's look at the Kyrian class ability, which for monks is Weapons of Order. 10% base mana, instant cast, 2-minute cooldown. So, mastery increased by 15% for 30 seconds, and the cooldown of Keg Smashers reset, and every target hit by subsequent Keg Smashers will have their damage taken by you, not by party members, increased by 5%, stacking up to 5 times. So, yes, on the good side, that is a decent buff to your dodge and attack power, and it does potentially synergize very well with a certain legendary power that we will go into later in the video. On the bad side, even at my current gear level, which isn't great, I admit, I'd still need a lot more haste to get 5 Keg Smashers inside that 30-second window. And the fact that the additional damage taken is only from the Brewmaster does make it less appealing for group content, though, you know, it's useful for raids and for just overland content. And so we move on to the Venthyr, who at the moment just strike me as people who weren't cool enough for the parties in Suramar, and so decided to go off in a huff and make their own parties elsewhere. So the Venthyr ability is called Door of Shadows. It is a teleport with a 35-yard range, 1.5 second cast, 1 charge and 1 minute recharge. So definitely one for the PvPers, or people who are particularly slow classes. DK! Excuse me. And probably cheesing certain mechanics as well, so this is probably going to be another one of those abilities that Blizzard goes, you can't use it here. No, but I want to. No, you can't use it there. Stop it. And then there's the Covenant class ability for Brewmasters, which I have to say is my least favourite of the 4. It's called Fallen Order, instant cast on a 3-minute cooldown. So for 24 seconds, summons Fallen Adepts of your order, either Ox, Crane or Tiger. Ox Adepts are the tanks, they will Breath of Fire. Tiger Adepts will Fist of Fury, and the Crane Adepts will heal you with Enveloping Mist. So I guess it is a decent DPS cooldown / panic button if you desperately need an additional heal, a bit of extra DPS just to get you over the line. On the bad side, if those ads are doing Breath of Fire, there's a good chance you've already got that up, and it's unlikely to stack with your own. And there doesn't appear to be, at the moment at least, any direct control over which type of adepts arrive. So, if you need a heal and you get a whole bunch of Fist of Fury guys, that's not going to help you very much. So, yeah, this is definitely not one of my favourites. And so it's time to meet the creepy people, the Necrolords, the people who like mashing meat together and making new things. And appropriately, their Covenant ability is called Fleshcraft. So, a 10-yard range, 4-second channel, 2-minute cooldown, forming a shield of flesh and bone over 4 seconds that prevents damage equal to 20% of your maximum health. Given that it does scale off health, this is a good ability for tanks, and therefore is also a good ability for Brewmasters. Definitely one in the running when it comes to Covenant abilities. The limited range and the channel would make it difficult to pull off in a pinch situation, but if you did actually manage it, you know, it's rewarding your skill in managing to do that. So yeah, I like this one a lot. And their Covenant class ability is disgusting, but is probably going to be quite effective. So it's Bone Dust Brew, 40-yard range, instant cast 1 minute cooldown, hurl a brew made from the bones of your enemies, coating all targets in disgusting skeletal beer for 10 seconds. Your abilities have a 15% chance to deal additional shadow damage and healing during this time. Also, Tiger Palm and Keg Smash will reduce the cooldown of your brews by 1 additional second per application. So, good things, the range. 40 yards, wow. Okay, this must be a light beer. Anyway, because it doesn't do any actual damage, it's interesting. You might be able to pull in line of sight from range, but because, you know, that's 40 yards, that's impressive. And there are lots of interesting interactions going on when it's being applied as well. You know, you've got the shadow damage, the healing, you're reducing brews. So there's a lot going on there. It's quite well designed. I do like it. The only bad thing I can say about it really is that my recent video about brew reduction possibly being removed looks like it's not going to happen because it just makes me look like a bit of a wally. But that's okay. Yeah, Bone Dust Brew. Big tick. And so we skip and happy clap into Ardenweald, home of the Night Fae. And their ability is kind of a movement ability. Instant cast 1.5 minute cooldown called Soul Shape. Do Brewmasters really need another movement ability? No. Will we take it? Absolutely. We love to move. So you turn into a Vulpin, increasing movement speed by 30%. And if you reactivate it while it's active, then you will teleport 10 yards forward. You can take several forms of various shapes and sizes, lasts for 12 seconds, or indefinitely while in a rest area, so that will be useful for moving around in those areas. It's okay. But it's the class Covenant ability for Brewmasters in Night Fae which really does get your attention. Phaeline Stomp, instant cast, 30-second cooldown, strikes the ground to expose a Phaeline that deals nature damage or 60% of attack power, and also casts Breath of Fire, lasts 30 seconds. Your abilities also have a 10% chance to reset the cooldown of Phaeline Stomp as long as you are standing on the Phaeline. So, I mean, at first look, this is going to be great for pulling large packs of anything. Overland, in dungeons, in raid trash. It's a lot of additional damage, it's a lot of additional threat. It's actually quite pretty too, which helps. It can potentially be triggered for eternity, as long as you just keep on, you know, pushing your buttons. And the nature damage component is actually over twice the initial hit of Breath of Fire, so it's got a bit of a punch to it too. The only bad thing I can think of is its positional dependence. You won't be able to reset the cooldown of Phaeline Stomp if you have 3 DPS pulling additional trash packs who are already half a screen ahead of you. So, I mean, as long as you've got DPS that stick with you, you should be fine. But anything that requires you to move a lot, and Phaeline Stomp does tend to lose its effectiveness a bit. And so, there you go. There you have it. Those are the 4 Covenants and their special class Covenant abilities. So, which one are you going to pick? As for me, after intensive meditation and research, theory crafting and beer, I'm going with Night Fae. Why? Because they're pretty, and that's the only reason why. And really, that's how you should be choosing your Covenant in Shadowlands, not on some class ability that someone else would prefer you use in your raid. But I've talked enough about that in other videos. The numbers at this point are largely irrelevant because it's so early, and they won't be adjusted until just before launch anyway. And yeah, like I said, Phaeline Stomp looks awesome too, which definitely helps. And now for something completely different. Conduits. Remember not so long ago when Soulbind conduits were going to be destroyed instead of being switched out? That would have been a pain to grind, and Ian Hazakostas came on and assured us all that this would not be the case. However, recent data mining has revealed that another grind was in mind all along. There is a probability now that each conduit will have 15 levels to max out. Now that's a grind if you've only got one character, but it's a nightmare if you have ults. And with 15 levels, you can imagine how insane some of these abilities will get when they're maxed out. Have fun balancing that, Blizzard. We know you won't be able to. How exactly we're acquiring these stronger conduits has not yet been revealed. It might be tied to the difficulty of the content you're doing, or just a simple XP bar that fills and upgrades automatically as long as you're using that conduit. We'll see, I guess. Conduits come in 3 exciting flavours. Potency, usually damage upgrades to your skills, Endurance for better defences, and Finesse for utility. Brewmasters get a choice of 2 spec-specific conduits per type, except for Finesse, plus a few more generic monk ones thrown in for good measure. Now, as I'm showing you these conduits, I'm going to give you the level 1 value, and also what the level 15 conduit value looks like at the moment. But of course these numbers are not solid, it's still very much beta, it's still all very much subject to change. Anyway, we'll start with potency, as the conduits that directly tie to your chosen covenant ability are all in this section. I also think it's worth pointing out at this point that you are never actually obliged to take any of these conduits. This is just an option that you have depending on which covenant that you pick. Anyway, starting with Kyrian, you get Strike with Clarity. Weapons of Order's duration is increased by 5 seconds, that's the way it always stays regardless of the conduit level, and the Mastery bonus is increased at level 1, that's a 5% increase, and at level 15 it's a 20% increase. Personally, with the way our stats are distributed at the moment, I think we're still more crit verse than Mastery, so I'm still not entirely excited by the Kyrian ability, but that's just me. The Venthia will get the opportunity to try and use Imbued Reflections. Fallen Order monks deal more damage and healing. At level 1 it's just 20%, but at level 15 it's 50%, so that could be a substantial cooldown. On to the Necrolords. They have Bone Marrow Hops, so they're adding ingredients to their skeletal beer. Bone Dust Brew's shadow damage and healing is increased, and its cooldown is reduced by 0.5 seconds every time shadow damage or healing is done. So the cooldown reduction remains the same, but with a level 1 conduit it's a 20% increase to shadow damage and healing, and for 15 it's a 50% shadow damage and healing. You know, if I was going for the best covenant, I'd probably go Necrolord at the moment, but they're not as pretty, so they lose. And then my crazy garden gang, the Night Fae, have Way of the Fae. Phaeline Stomp's damage is increased per target to a maximum of 5 targets. A level 1 conduit will give a 10% increase, and a level 15 a 25% increase. But wait, there's more! There are 2 other Brewmaster specific potency conduits to consider. The first one is Scalding Brew. Keg Smash deals more damage to targets already affected by Breath of Fire. A level 1 conduit, 20% damage. A level 15 conduit, 50% extra damage. And there's also Walk with the Ox. This is our new baseline cooldown, Invoke Nizal. Using abilities that grant Shuffle, so that's Keg Smash, Blackout Kick, Spinning Crane Kick, will reduce the cooldown on Angry Dave, which is what Nizal is called, by 0.5 seconds. That's stuck, but Angry Dave's AoE stomp damage is increased. The damage according to Conduit, so a level 1 Conduit will give you 10% more damage on the AoE stomp, a level 15 Conduit 25% more damage. And now on to our next set of conduits, the Endurance Conduits. These aren't nearly as exciting. We will start with Fortifying Ingredients, which will give you a shield worth a percentage of your total health. Now at level 1 that's a 5% shield, and at level 15 it's a 20% shield. To be honest, this looks pretty useless for Brewmasters, considering you know, it'll be available around once every 3.5 to 4 minutes, and while it does scale with health, which is good for tanks, it's not really going to be mitigating that much damage. That and the current state of Celestial Brew makes this, well, pretty meh, really. I'd pass. Next up is Grounding Breath. Casting Vivify on yourself has a chance to refund the cost and increases the healing done. So the chance doesn't change, but the healing does. Level 1 Conduit, 10% increased healing. Level 15 Conduit, 25% increased healing. Once again, there aren't that many times outside of Overland content where you will be casting Vivify on yourself unless the healer has been deaded by bad things, which is probably your fault, incidentally. So this is probably not worth taking either, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of group content. And in the last of the generics, we've got Harm Denial, which increases Expel Harm's healing and the 10% damage component by a percentage amount. A level 1 Conduit, 20% increase. A level 15 Conduit has a 35% increase. Now, those numbers do look rather impressive. It's like, oh, that's quite a percentage. But you have to take into account how little healing it does to start with. I mean, currently on my monk, my Gifts of the Ox are about 20k. A 20% increase on that is 24k. That also means the damage component is increasing by 400 damage points. It's very, very little, and it absolutely isn't worth taking in my personal opinion. Thankfully, the specific Brewmaster conduits are a little bit more encouraging. Celestial Effervescence will increase your self-healing by 20%, while Celestial Brew is active as a level 1 conduit. That healing will increase to 35% as a level 15 conduit. So you can already see that this is much stronger than Harm Denial because it encapsulates Celestial Fortune, Expel Harm, Vivify, Chi Burst, and Healing Elixirs. I still suspect that this is a bit of a trap though. Celestial Brew usage at the moment will be pretty much on cooldown, so most of this healing will be a passive bonus to you should you need it. And really, you'd have to be using Celestial Brew in a sort of emergency heal situation in order to get maximum usage out of it. So I'm not entirely sold on it, but it is a better option than the 3 generics that we have so far. Evasive Stride looks like the one that most people will be aiming for as Brewmaster. As you can see from the tooltip, Shuffle will grant you a percentage value more stagger effectiveness. Now at level 1, that's a 5% increase, and at level 15, that's a 20% increase. I can see this changing, because it's such an obvious best conduit ever. Because if you have Shuffle at 75%, and you have a level 15 conduit that gives you another 20%, you're sitting on 95% stagger effectiveness. And if you take the high tolerance talent, it's another 5%. So are they seriously designing stagger so you can stagger 100% of all incoming damage? I'm thinking not. I'm thinking that's probably going to be tweaked a bit or removed altogether. But if it does stay, then yay for us. But, you know, surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
And so we round out the conduit section with the finesse ones for Monk. There are 4 available for all specs. Dizzying Tumble. Targets that chew leg sweep will deal a percentage less damage for 5 seconds. At level 1 that's 5% less damage, and at level 15 conduit it's 20% less damage. Now I'm hoping that that 5-second damage reduction is after they pick themselves up, otherwise this is a 2-second damage reduction and that sounds useless. It's okay, and it's probably the tankiest of the 4 options here. Lingering Numbness. Targets affected by your paralysis will have their movement speed reduced for 5 seconds. At level 1, it's already a pretty potent 60% speed reduction. At level 15, it's a 90% speed reduction. For me, this is a PvP ability. I mean, I suppose you could use it to kite in PvE, but you do already have some tools that help you to do that. So I'd probably skip over this because I'm rubbish at PvP and don't feel like embarrassing myself. Swift Transference is my favourite of these 4. Using Transcendence Transfer increases your movement speed for 10 seconds. That's a guess. It's not actually on the tooltip, so I think it will be for 10 seconds, because Transcendence Transfer is 10 seconds. It's a 10% speed increase at level 1, it's a 25% speed increase at level 15. More mobility and movement. You know, we monks love that stuff, so yeah, I'm all for that. And finally, Tumbling Technique. Blackout Kick has a chance to grant a new charge of roll. So, more movement bonus. I did have an image of like stacking this to like 100 and then just rolling endlessly to the end boss, you know, and something like the Mother Load. Just pulling a whole bunch of goblins and they all just sort of fall behind and I just keep rolling all the way through to the end and then yeah, we wipe. But it would have been fun. That's not likely to happen though. It's pretty niche, this one. It's nice to get out of fire moments. It's only 5% at level 1. It's 20% chance for a new charge of roll at level 15. Not my favourite, but you know, could be useful. Well then, any ideas on the conduits you'll be aiming for? Personally, I'm looking at Scalding Brew, Evasive Stride and Swift Transference as my munchkins of choice. But, you know, as you've seen, some of the level 15 conduits data mined so far are nuts. So at this point, it's not confirmed, it's all beta, so make sure you have a pinch of salt available and perhaps a dob of mustard as well. We'll just have to see how they try and balance those out. Okay, last section. I promise I've taken up enough of your time already today. Legendary powers are different to the standard legendaries that you might have been familiar with before. They're not a piece of gear, they're more something that augments a piece of gear that you've equipped. The materials for these legendary pieces are collected from Professions and the new Torghast experience, which I understand is very enjoyable. We'll probably get one to start, one legendary power, and that's it, and then more will become available later, kind of like Legion. Legendary powers are slot specific in most cases. There are a couple that haven't had slots assigned as yet, but I'm sure they will, probably to avoid stacking powerful combinations. There are 4 generic legendary powers for monks that we can also have, but they do look unfinished and they're absolutely awful, so I'm not even going to bother showing them to you. They're that bad. First up, Facepalm. Now, it wasn't all that long ago that I was saying that its time had come and gone, and then, you know, within a week, it's back again, and it's back as a legendary power. So, Tiger Palm has a 10% chance to deal 300% of normal damage and reduce the cooldown of your brews by 1 second, which is what it does anyway, but okay, whatever. So yes, a very popular Legion relic towards the end of that expansion. Would be great for single target fights. It currently fits to either the chest or the finger slot. And you know, Tiger Palm at the moment is a fairly dull ability, so it's really nice to see, you know, it have a chance to do something exciting, like a bit of bursty single target damage. So, good. Yeah, not bad at all. Right, so the next 2 legendaries I'm going to put under the category of interesting. First, Flaming Kicks. Breath of Fire ignites your leg for 8 seconds. While you're burning, Blackout Kick and Spinning Crane Kick deal 30% more damage as fire and refreshes the duration of Breath of Fire. So, if you like fire, so you can fire while you fire, then this is definitely the legendary power for you. It is somewhat similar to Celestial Flames, so I'm not sure if that's a deliberate crossover or this is a holding idea. Yeah, they do seem awfully similar at the moment, so I think one of them is going to have to give way. But yes, obviously this is great for any AoE encounters that you may be thinking of. Mighty Paw. Ironskin Brew increases your armor by 30% and has a 1% chance to not consume a charge. So you probably noticed the first problem with this, the mention of Ironskin Brew. Everyone had assumed that it had gone away. It is still technically in the beta. It was introduced in the alpha release. They just changed the duration from 7 to 5 seconds. So I don't know about that one. I mean, are they really seriously going to bring it back? Maybe it's just a fallback position if shuffle doesn't work out. Who knows? But if it is changed to shuffle, it'll have the same effect. It'll be like a near permanent 30% armor buff when you're in combat. We don't have the highest amount of armor So, you know, that would definitely be a bonus. And I think the way that stagger is calculated is that it'll take the armor into account first before it calculates the stagger dots, so you will get smaller stagger dots with a higher armor level. So, yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's not finished, but yeah, definitely one worth considering. And now for the final Brewmaster specific legendary power, which is legendary in its own right. Storm Stout's Last Gasp. Keg Smash deals 30% more damage and has 1 additional charge. Oh my. Well, if you were playing Legion, this was probably one of your favourite legendaries. It was certainly one of mine. It was one of the 2 I think I took into BFA before they got disabled halfway through. It's actually 5% more damage than the original legendary as well, so it's even stronger than it was before. It's more damage, more AoE, more threat, and more fun. Now, remember when I was talking about Weapons of Order way back in this video, that a certain legendary would stack rather well with it? Well, yes, here we are. If you now used Weapons of Order, you probably could very easily get, you know, that many Keg Smashers inside that 30-second window, and all of the targets being hit by those Keg Smashers would take, you know, at max stacks, an additional 25% damage. Now, if you also happen to have the Scalding Brew Conduit going, at 20% additional damage for targets affected by Breath of Fire, that's even more damage. If you had a 15, it would be 50% more damage. And you're also wearing this legendary, that's going to be quite powerful. You're going to like your Keg Smashers a lot. You're going to go through a lot of beer, but believe me, it's going to be worth it. So yeah, this is probably going to be my choice, because I guess it's more fun than the others anyway. But yeah, if we only get one, this is the one I'm taking. Abso-doodly-doodly. And so yes, that's it. That's all I have for you today. I'm sorry it took so long, but there was quite a lot to go through. And I hope that's given you all an idea of the Brewmasters options for Shadowlands and how they're shaping up. So feel free to comment, agree, disagree, question my parentage, etc. in the comment section below. And I will see you again soon. Grumpy Gamer, out!